My entire world collapsed the afternoon I decided to finally clean out my husband's truck and discovered a dusty mixtape labeled For M. I popped it into an old boombox he claimed he kept for vintage vibes. And suddenly, I was listening to another woman describe her relationship with my husband like I was nothing more than furniture in his life. I'd been meaning to deal with his truck for weeks. The passenger side was a disaster zone. Gas station receipts, crushed coffee cups, empty water bottles. I was just stuffing everything into a garbage bag when my hand brushed against something wedged deep beneath the driver's seat. Plastic. Rectangular. I had to practically climb halfway under the seat to fish it out. A mixtape. Not a Spotify playlist, not a burned CD. An actual cassette tape from the 90s. Someone had clearly gone through the trouble of labeling it with a Sharpie. For M. My husband's name is Michael. My stomach dropped immediately, even though I told myself it could mean literally anything. I sat there in the driveway, turning this relic over in my hands, realizing we didn't own a single device that could play it. Then I remembered the boombox. Michael kept it in our storage crawl space, always making jokes about how retro he was, how he sometimes dug it out to relive his college days. I'd never once verified this story. I dragged it out, blew off the dust, and hit play. Static. Then her voice. I knew in half a second it wasn't mine. She sounded intimate, comfortable, the way you talk when you believe you're completely alone with someone who matters. Within moments, she said his name, Michael, and I started constructing explanations. Old girlfriend from before we met, ancient history, the only version of this that didn't terrify me. But she kept talking. She mentioned missing him. Complained that last night ended too soon. And then she warned him to watch himself because his wife was getting suspicious. The word hit like ice water. I sat frozen in our unfinished basement, surrounded by Christmas decorations and forgotten exercise equipment, trying to breathe. When I finally pressed play again, she described a restaurant Michael and I had visited the previous weekend. A business trip he'd taken in March. Recent events, recent memories. This wasn't archival footage from his bachelor days. She was done hiding, she said. Done being his secret. She didn't believe he'd ever leave me, and she was tired of waiting. Then came the sentence that erased every remaining doubt. If he wouldn't choose, she'd choose for him. She'd tell his wife everything. I sat in that basement for an hour, gripping that tape, understanding something devastating. This object had been riding around with him for months. I'd probably sat right above it, adjusting the radio, completely oblivious. And suddenly I was rewatching our entire recent history through a different lens. The way his phone faced down on every surface. The bathroom breaks that took his cell with them. The increasingly frequent late nights at the office. I didn't have the full picture yet. But I knew our marriage had just ended. I made one decision immediately. Say nothing. Not out of fear, out of strategy. If I confronted Michael now, he'd deny everything, gaslight me into questioning the evidence itself, and I'd be left with nothing but paranoia and a cassette tape. So I hid it in my purse and started building my case. That night, he came through the door, like always, kissed my cheek, asked about my day, launched into some story about workplace drama. I studied his face for cracks in the mask, but he was seamless. Same tired eyes, same familiar voice. The performance was flawless. For the first time, I really noticed his phone behavior. Screen always face down. Never left unattended, even for 30 seconds. When he finally showered, I broke our unspoken privacy agreement. His passcode hadn't changed, still the same 4 digits we use for our shared streaming accounts. His texts were pristine, suspiciously so. No unusual contacts, no deleted threads, nothing. His photos were all screenshots and memes. His email, work newsletters, and Amazon receipts. The cleanliness itself became the red flag. I knew something existed. I'd heard it with my own ears. Yet his digital life was sterilized. 3 days later, I noticed the pattern. Tuesday, client dinners. Thursday, emergency meetings. Always plausible, always last minute, always stretching past midnight. Each excuse delivered with rehearsed confidence. I tested one. He claimed a business dinner at a steakhouse I knew. 40 minutes after he left, I checked our joint credit card app. No charges from that restaurant. Not tonight, not last week, not ever. The following night, while he slept, I enabled iCloud backup on his phone. Took 90 seconds. His screen lit up multiple times with notifications, but by morning, the cloud held nothing new. Day 4, I returned to his truck. If he played that tape while driving, what else might he keep there? Glovebox yielded only registration and insurance cards. But the center console, there it was. A burner phone. Cheap Android, no case, clearly hidden with intention. It woke to my touch. Notifications flooded the lock screen. His birthday unlocked it. One conversation thread. No contact name, just 10 digits. I opened it and understood. The tape was merely the opening credits. Here was the full feature film, months of messages, meetup coordinates, hotel names, restaurant selfies, and one exchange I read repeatedly, certain I was misinterpreting. She was issuing an ultimatum. Tell his wife or she would. His response, don't worry, she'll never suspect. I sat in that truck until my hands trembled, but the timeline disturbed me more than the betrayal itself. Not weeks, not months, nearly 3 years. 3 years of parallel existence. 3 years of coming home to my face while carrying her in his pocket. 3 years of normal. But the final message, time-stamped hours ago, delivered the knockout blow. She was pregnant, and she was done being invisible. I had confirmation now, but I still lacked her face. Just M in his contacts. Just a silhouette behind words. I studied their photos until I found my opening, a mirror selfie where her yoga studio's logo reflected behind her. I knew that studio. I'd been attending classes there for 10 months. The coincidence felt suffocating. I pulled up their Instagram, scrolling through tagged photos until I found her. Same face from the mirror shot. Same smile. Same branded leggings. Her profile public. Her life on display. She'd posted a class video, tagging her instructor. My instructor. Different time slot, same teacher. We'd been breathing the same studio air. Never overlapping, never meeting. Until now, I messaged the front desk requesting a schedule change. Claimed my work hours had shifted. 2 days later, I stood on a mat 3 feet from her. She had no idea. To her, I was just another woman in athletic wear, struggling through downward dog. I observed for a week. She was magnetic, effortlessly social, quick to laugh, genuinely kind. Nothing about her suggested affair with a married man. Then she approached me, natural as gravity. We bonded over complaining about crow pose, graduated to post-class coffee with the group. Within weeks, we had inside jokes. She confided in me about complicated situations, about men who promised changes they never delivered. She was describing my husband, so I set the trap. Mentioned Michael would pick me up after Thursday's class, suggested we grab coffee at the cafe next door while I waited. She agreed enthusiastically. I texted Michael, running late, meet me at the cafe by the studio. He wrote back, on my way. The door opened at 6:47. Michael walked in, spotted me, smiled, and then saw who sat across from me. I've never witnessed someone actually freeze. His blood drained, his body locked. Because there we were, his wife, his mistress, and the lie that connected us, all occupying 6 square feet of coffee shop real estate. I set the burner phone on the table between us. I know everything, I said. I walked them through it. The tape, the hidden phone, the 3-year excavation of our marriage. Her expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror as she realized I wasn't some stranger. I'd been her confidant, her coffee companion, her friend. She'd believed his marriage was a technicality, that we were roommates with rings, that freedom was imminent. Instead, she'd been pouring her heart out to his wife. The cafe should have been the finale. Screaming, tears, someone storming out. That's how these stories resolve. But reality doesn't follow screenplay structure. Michael tried explaining, contradicting himself, claiming misunderstanding. She stared at him like a specimen she'd never properly examined. I listened for 3 minutes, then walked out. I had no energy for theater. I wanted silence. I drove to my sister's house, unpacked everything, the tape, the phone, the yoga studio coincidence, the pregnancy announcement. She poured wine I didn't drink. I stayed the night because I couldn't bear his face. His text started at dawn. Paragraphs shrinking to sentences, shrinking to single words. Please. I answered none. He appeared at my sister's door 48 hours later, unshaven, hollow-eyed. Everything was ruined, he said. But I had to understand. Then he produced an envelope. Medical records, he explained. He'd learned the truth 1 week ago. I unfolded them slowly. Paternity test. Her name, and the result? Exclusion. Not his. I looked up expecting excuses, but found only brokenness. She'd confessed herself, he said. Another man, same time frame. She'd assumed, tested, and learned the truth. I waited for relief. It never arrived. Only cold comprehension. 3 years of deception, 3 years of destruction. And the woman he'd demolished us for had been playing her own parallel game. But the final twist came next. After our café confrontation, she'd vanished. No calls, no classes, deleted social presence. Her parting message to him displayed on his regular phone. Everything's destroyed. We all live with what we've built. I stared at those words, understanding too late. I'd orchestrated exposure, staged confrontation, believed I was forcing truth into light, but they'd already been imploding. My intervention changed nothing except the timing. He lost his family. She lost her imagined future. And I sat with test results in my hands, finally grasping that the truth I'd excavated so carefully repaired absolutely nothing. It simply certified the damage. After that evening, I stopped investigating. For weeks, existence had meant following breadcrumbs. Tape to phone to studio to confrontation. Now the trail ended, not because I'd reached the truth, but because truth no longer mattered. The destruction was complete. I stayed with my sister, tried ordinary hours without checking devices, without rehearsing conversations, without reaching for that burner phone. The emptiness arrived then. Shock and rage at least contain energy. Their absence leaves only quiet recognition that something massive has disappeared. Michael kept writing, explanations becoming shorter, more desperate. He didn't understand how it happened. The affair had become obligation rather than desire. It started as mistake and metastasized. I read without responding, not punitively, but because explanations had become irrelevant. True or false, the equation balanced the same. I returned home after 7 days. He'd packed boxes. Our house felt like a shared apartment between strangers who avoided kitchen collisions. We spoke calmly, almost politely, stranger than screaming. He confirmed everything. 3 years, the parallel existence. The moment he'd stopped distinguishing between lives. Then the unexpected message arrived. Unknown number, late evening. I'm the woman from the café. One thing before I disappear. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before opening it fully. She knew how it looked, she wrote. Understood my hatred. But I needed to know. For 3 years, Michael had described our marriage as a corpse. Roommates, not lovers. Divorce inevitable, merely delayed. And she'd believed. I read this, catching myself in strange empathy. Not forgiveness, perspective. If her version held any truth, his deception had targeted us both. She expected nothing, she concluded. The café had shown her how thoroughly she'd been manipulated. Now she could only vanish, attempt reconstruction elsewhere. I didn't reply. Not punishment, pointlessness. We'd both become supporting characters in a narrative neither controlled. He moved out permanently 1 month later. Divorce proceedings moved with bureaucratic coldness. No courtroom drama, just paperwork and practical conversations about utility bills. Each normal exchange reminded me that relationships dissolve quietly, almost politely, even after interior explosions. Months have passed. I still think about that tape. Had I ignored the mess in his truck, I'd remain in the parallel universe where nothing happened, where Michael came home each evening, where 3 years of shadow life stayed invisible, where I was happy because I was ignorant. And here's the question that still arrives at 3 a.m. The truth destroyed everything. But if I could reverse that afternoon, slip the tape back under the seat, skip the attic, never press play, would I? Or is awareness, however devastating, preferable to happiness built on absence?